Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let me bump up my volume a little bit, just a touch. I have found a new headset, so I do apologize if I'm coming off a little bit softer than usual. We are trying to do new things all around this time around, I suppose. It's definitely one of those days I might be a little bit contact high. It's New Jersey / New York City, so it is what it is, you know how it is. In any case, hello, welcome to Night Rights. Hello, somebody just joined. P.S. Please tell me if I'm coming off a little bit too soft, too loud, doesn't matter. New headset. So, welcome to Night Rights. I'm Jax Wolf. As you know, I'm a fantasy writer-ish. Somebody who is slowly working on their debut. It will be out someday, I promise. And this is our weekly writing stream. What do we do during the writing stream? Well, for the first half an hour, we just shoot the shit. If you are watching from Blue Sky, it's totally valid. You are allowed to stay on your dash, but just to let you know, there is an open chat if you click the link. That chat is YouTube chat, so you do kind of need an account, I do believe, to participate, but you do get to vibe with excellent people, and I do get to read what you say in the chat and recite it aloud and respond to it. That's why you're not allowed to violate TOS while you're in there. So, like, if you're already in here, you know the rules. Don't do weird stuff. And by weird stuff, I don't mean what Blue Sky constitutes as weird stuff. So, that was a thing that happened recently, wasn't it? But we'll get to that in a moment, I'm sure. If you're a little bit shy, we do have an icebreaker every night, and I will get to answering the icebreaker myself. The icebreaker is just designed to help you ease into it and start introducing yourselves to the rest of the fine people that are in chat, like Cryptic, who says hello, and Oakleaf, hello. Long time no hear. So tonight's icebreaker is, have you ever done or would you ever want to do an AU of your work in progress? And tell us about the AUs you've done, tell us about the ones that you want to do, have fun with that. For the rest of the night, once we hit 9 o'clock, we start our first of 3 word sprints, and they're word sprints in name only. It's basically whatever you've come to the chat with, whether that is your writing and editing, video games. We've had somebody just kind of like take a nap for a while. It's all good. So for 20 minutes, we work on that. At the end of the 20 minutes, we start off by talking about our progress, congratulating each other, and then we launch into a break. That break is supposed to be only about 15 minutes, but tends to be about like a half an hour because I cannot shut up during those breaks. Then we launch into a second 20-minute sprint, and we do those sprints 3 times, sandwiching 2 breaks, and then at the very end you hear updates and stuff like that, and I release you into the void. But it's all chill, it is all relaxed, and we all have fun here. That said, hello to the chat. It is Cryptic and Oakleaf, 2 of our regulars. Oakleaf has come back after a bit of a break, I do believe. Oakleaf says, look, we're both #1. Yes, you do. YouTube introduced a fun little experience point system. I think that there's a way to turn it off, but I'm too amused by it to turn it off. So if you join the chat, all you have to do is start typing things into the chat, and you can fight with the other people that are in there for spot #1. It gets you absolutely nothing except for a cute little purple crown. The #2 spot is also a cute little lavender crown, so it's just as cute. Cryptic says, yes we are. Cryptic says, I haven't done any AUs, but I do think I would like to at some point. I just need the right idea for it. That's valid. You also kind of have to be like attached enough to an idea to kind of like spawn the AUs, I think. Like, oh, I like these characters. I think that they would be fun in a pirate AU. That having been said, I think that it would be hilarious if most of your characters were in pirate AUs. I'm just saying. Oakleaf says, I've done AUs of RPGs with friends, but not of my own novels. I don't think I'd want to. I'm not against it, just not terribly interested beyond maybe casual joking around. Yeah, that's also valid, to be honest. It kind of goes hand in hand with what I was saying about how you have to really be into your characters to do one, because it's sort of like you are basically taking the finer concepts of your novel and kind of peeling them away, so you end up with basically a completely different idea and characters in name only. And that's fucking hilarious whenever you're doing an RPG. So it's like a better thing to do with an RPG for sure. But for a novel, it's like, it's hit or miss. I say this having written, having not only written an AU, but having also brought one to work on today. But I also acknowledge that this is the one that I'm working on, which is a 90s AU of the fantasy novel that I'm supposed to be working on, by the way, just in case you have yet to actually get into it. I acknowledge that it is nothing like the actual novel. So these are Mick and Eleanor in name only and so forth. These are all the characters in name only. So it's a little bit jarring to go from this and back to TNS proper. I think that's partly why it worked to my detriment when I started going into draft 5. So we're going to see how it goes with draft 6, which I'm starting in, probably a couple weeks from now. Let's see, Cryptic says, would it be possible for your speaking volume to be raised? Absolutely. I am going to try... Excuse me while I speak through this. I'm just kind of like watching the mic aux meter go up and see where we start to get into the danger zone. I do believe I'm not quite at the danger zone yet. There's that. I think that's right at the danger zone, the edge of the danger zone, as it were. Let me see if I can take down the music a couple of notches. Tell me when you stop hearing it. I do believe right about here might be a good thing. Is that a good mix, peeps? And I immediately stopped talking. That is very helpful to all of you, I'm sure. Actually, let me take down the mic a little bit. I think that's a little bit too close to the danger zone. Or maybe a little bit back up. There we go. Hopefully that's a little bit better of a mix. Cryptic says, I am, however, Cryptic says, skipping down a little bit, Cryptic says, sounds good to me. Excellent. So you still hear the music and you can hear my lovely voice better, hopefully. Oakleaf says, much better. Excellent. I will just double check at the end of the stream. Just like watch this and see where we are. So you probably missed the entire explanation, but TLDR, there are word sprints. They will start in about 20 minutes. You don't need to know too much about that. We are currently discussing the icebreaker, which is on the left side of your screen, which is, have you ever done or would you ever want to do an AU of your work in progress? Let's see, where were we on that front? Cryptic says, I am, however, now imagining my fantasy story characters in an AU because it would just be the dwarf being a dad at the whole rest of the cast. I endorse dad shenanigans, to be honest with you, especially dwarf dad shenanigans, so please do. Cryptic says, standard modern day AU. Please have dad shenanigans. Oakleaf says, characters are so informed by their setting, too, that putting them in AUs can be an interesting exercise in character exploration. But I love setting too much to abandon it completely, lol. Totally understandable, I hear you. Then we got to the confirmations. Cryptic says, for me, part of the fun of an AU is molding the new world to find how the characters would end up that way. You know, that is a good point too. Like, seeing how the setting changes your characters. Actually, you know, there are two different flavors of AU now that I think about it. There's like the take your characters, plot them in a different setting, and see what shenanigans ensue. That is like your standard modern day AU, pirate AU, 90s AU, basically all the AUs that we've been talking about. But there's also the far more interesting one, in my opinion, and that is the what if AU. So it's sort of like you take a point in time in your story and then change that point in a certain way, and then explore what happens from there and what the present of your story looks like as a result of that. And that is also a very valid thing to explore and something that I kind of now want to do now that I think about it. But anyway, that might be a story or an icebreaker question for another day. Somebody remind me to do that one. Anyway, Hootzel, who is a new user, I do believe. Hello, Hootzel. Welcome to the chat. Hootzel says, picturing my bugs as humans would be an interesting idea. The culture which shapes their characters. Excuse me a second. Sorry, a little bit of spit flew into the back of my mouth. TMI, but. Picturing my bugs as humans would be an interesting idea. The culture which shapes their characters is reliant on being bugs, so seeing how they would manage in real-world context is interesting. Ooh. Like, also, what kind of bugs are we talking about? Is it like four-armed humanoid-ish creatures? Because if so, that would be interesting. Like, thinking about how a normally four-armed being does with two hands. Among other things, of course. But Oakleaf mirrors my sentiment with ooh bugs. Oakleaf says, yeah, I think it depends on what you mean by AU. Is it like a whole new invented world, or sticking your characters into Star Wars or the modern world? Cryptic says, the what if X lived AU. Exactly. Oakleaf says, ooh, that's very interesting. I hadn't considered an AU as what if XYZ happened instead. Yeah, it might be. I feel like most fandoms tend to think of like AU as like the first thing that you were describing, or no, not first thing, but I want to say second thing, sticking your characters into Star Wars or the modern world, that kind of one. Excuse me. Hydrate or dihydrate, by the way, guys. While I die choking on my own spit. But anyway, yeah, I feel like a lot of writing spaces and fandom spaces think of AUs as the second thing, where you put your characters into various other worlds, as in the Star Wars universe, or the Flower Shop AU, Coffee Shop AU, all those fun AUs ones. High school AU, which I've never really gotten into, that kind of thing. And I am 100% guilty of that too. Like, I designed this icebreaker with that idea in mind. But if you look at it in a broader context, those would totally be AUs, wouldn't they? But anyway. Hootzel says, it drastically depends. Their races are based on different types of arthropods and also follow basic arthropod conventions. Ooh. So there's like millipede and centipede bug people? Because if so, that's so fucking rad. Like, excuse me if all the swearing is a little bit off-putting, by the way. I also swear like a sailor. But in any case, yes, centipede people would be so rad. Or is it like literal bugs with like human thought processes, I want to say? Like Redwall but with bugs, because that would also be awesome. Cryptic says, I think the reason it's not talked about as an AU in a lot of fandoms is because they're so often referred to as fix-it-fix. That is... Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. Like, I thought it might be... I wasn't sure if I was using the right terminology whenever I was describing it, but, like... Yeah, now that you mention it, that's how fandom often uses that concept, isn't it? Even though, like, it's such a flexible concept, like, you can make things better or worse. It's like that reverse Invader Zim quote. Like, I made it better. You made things worse. Something like that. It's been a long time since I've watched Invader Zim. Anyway. Cryptic says, so they fall into a different category that is actually just a different type of AAU. It's kind of funny how we categorize things like that, isn't it? But, yes, thank you. That's what the quote is, Cryptic. Cryptic says, I put the fires out. I put the fires out. You made them worse. Worse or better? God, I miss Invader Zim. I've yet to see the movie though. Like, I know I'm super late to the party and I really should. Same thing with the Ruckus Modern Life movie, to be honest with you. Which I've heard is actually very excellent. But in any case, Oakleaf says, I have definitely done a fair number of Everyone Lives fics, lol. I also would like to compliment you because that implies you killed characters off. I have yet to bring myself to kill mine off. It's like, as soon as I start writing them, I'm like, fuck, you're gonna live. I've done that with so many saints so far, for the Nameless Song. And even like in other stories, I'd be like, yeah, I've created this character specifically to die. Why are they still alive at the end of the story? But anyway, Cryptic says, Invader Zim was my first real fandom. I haven't seen the movie either, or read the comics. I can't commit to killing characters. I love how reading that in sequence is very on brand for Invader Zim stuff. But in any case, I was not aware that there were Invader Zim comics, and I feel like I have failed my 2000 self. But, you know what? I have like a Netflix trial that came with my new internet. I really should just like sit down and watch all the things. Like, Wednesday season 2 is on my list. I know season 1 was terrible, but sort of like, god damn it, I need to find out what's going on. But Invader Zim's movie is still on Netflix, right? That's where it was in the first place. If not, I'll yo-ho-ho it. But in any case, I'm very all over the place today. I do apologize. We keep on talking about, you guys keep on trying to have a conversation with me. I'm like, oh, but I need to talk about this random other thing. Wait a second. Anyway. Cryptic says, I literally designed a character in No Wrong Heroes to die, and then he looked at me with his stupid puppy dog eyes, and I couldn't go through with it. That is literally what happened. Like, okay, I'm going to spoil a draft of the Nameless Song for you. It's okay because I completely nuked this entire draft. But at the end of the original end of the first book, there's a climactic battle between Mick and the captain of the Queen's Guard, Ismail. And Mick is supposed to... No, actually, it was supposed to be that Fei Lin fails at protecting her own saint from Ophina, the light goddess. And the light goddess and her champion, Albert, basically kill Ismail while Mick just stands by and watches, and this is all kind of like a traumatic experience, yada yada yada. It sets up the antagonist of the second book, which is Eleanor's brother, or was until I changed his plan. But the problem is I get to that part, I'm like, I can't kill Ismail. He's too much of a gentleman. He is more likable than Albert. I am going to just kind of set him aside. He's going to go to Sanctuary, and he's going to rest up, and that's where he's going to be for the second book, and everybody's going to think he's dead. And I'm like, I created this character just to kill him, and now he's alive and well. So, in other words, that is why Benjamin exists. Benjamin, the bee person, the trans bee man, because I could not do the climactic battle with the major antagonist living. And Benjamin is also an antagonist. I will not tell you his ultimate fate at the end of the book. Is a happy ending, maybe. But basically, I couldn't bring myself to end the book with a death. So that's what happened. In other words, don't get attached to the characters you're supposed to be killing. That is lesson number 1 for all you fiction writing girlies out there, because if you get attached to the character you're supposed to be killing off, then all of a sudden they're not dead anymore at the end of your story. Oku says, oh, I meant Phantom A's, not my own work. I very rarely kill off my own characters, lol. I have a big soft heart, right? Like, you put effort into them, and you put them in the story, and you work with them, and you're like, I put so much effort into you, I can't do it. I do not know how the, let's see, the dark fiction, well, I don't know, the dark fiction writing girlies do kind of understand how to do it by making their characters so fucking unlikable that, of course, they'll die. Like, I read Throne of Glass recently, and, like, I was like, whenever a character died in that one, I was like, I barely knew their names, and this one was a complete jerk-ass. So, and it's the same thing, like, all around. Like, I think, even in Gideon the Ninth, like, sure, I liked and just in case you haven't read Gideon the Ninth, but, like, and I also kind of like and but, two of those, like, you kind of, like, it makes sense for the story, so you can't argue against it. And the other two are just sort of like, you like them, but at the very least you didn't spend enough time with them to get attached. But still, like, I salute any writer who, like, actually spends time with their characters, builds them up, and still kills them off. So, like, salute to Tamsumui, or however, I actually probably should figure out how to pronounce that. Anyway. Hootzel says, maybe it's because I started writing Ronpas, but it's easy to kill off characters in droves, depending on how it benefits the story. Oh man, that is a term that I haven't seen in ages, but damn, yeah. Cryptic says, I couldn't kill Michael, and then I managed to kill Hercules, but now I don't think I can keep him dead. He has to come back. Oakley says, yeah, Hootzel, if it benefits the story and it matters to the plot, then it's okay. But I do think a lot of media out there does shock factor deaths and make me kind of allergic to killing characters. Cryptic says, I see the potential in Michael and Hercules, who they could be. But also, Cryptic, I'm just going to enable you and say it would be hilarious if Hercules didn't die. So go for it. For sure. And Michael, too. Oakley says, yes, when a character dies, you lose all that potential. Cryptic says, especially when Hercules' death is him making the choice to be a better person. Oakley says, Benjamin must be protected. Don't worry, Benjamin will be very well cared for. Cryptic says, how can I punish him for that? Hootzel says, I despise doing something for shock factor. And I love you already. I have just met you tonight, but yes, thank you. At least, I think I've just met you tonight. Please correct me if you were actually here on a different night and I completely forgot. And I will apologize profusely. But in any case, I despise doing something for shock factor. I would much rather tell a story where you can see everything coming a mile away as long as the emotional beats land, right? Like, it's just so much more satisfying whenever you're, like, really focused on getting the effect across, you know what I mean? Like, I guess it's sort of like how, we used to criticize, and kind of still do, horror movies a lot. Like, I remember, like, 10 years ago, horror movies and comedy movies. Like, comedy movies got dumber for a while because that's probably a bad word. They relied heavily on easy, cheap laughs and gross out humor. That's what comedy movies did, and horror movies were just like splatter central. And it wasn't in the sense that slasher movies, like the slasher movies of yesteryear were. It was just sort of like gore for the sake of gore and stuff like that. Granted, nowadays, like we look back at the horror genre at least, and we're all like, well, actually, Final Destination had really some really cool effects, and the Saw movies were actually kind of weirdly deep for what they were, things like that. And nobody says anything good about Hostel, but in any case, it's like the more that you try to push for shock value, the more you accidentally desensitize the audience. And you also have to really understand, I think, that a lot of audiences are coming into it already desensitized, or like maybe they like that. Like sometimes I read fantasy novels or fantasy books, and I'm like, it's that people have really hyped up, and I'm like, it's okay, I guess. Like I'm trying to get through Dragonfall because somebody was like, this is a really good comp title for, or they didn't say that it was a really good comp title for TNS, but they said that, my idea sounded a little bit like Dragonfall. I was like, well, I have nowhere else to, no other leads, so why not? So I took it out of the library via Libby, and I started reading it, and it's like, it's a book talk fantasy novel, basically. Book talk loves it, and it is extremely slow paced, and there's just no chemistry because it just feels very heavy-handed in some aspects. Like it really hypes up that one of the main characters was poor and downtrodden, and at the same time, like, and oh, he's this dark thief, and I'm like, I've read a dozen pitches that featured like dark thieves and stuff like that. And oh, there's so much brooding and there's so much violence, and it's sort of like, and this is a dark fantasy, and I'm like, I am already tired. But in any case, where was I going with that? Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is I would 100% agree. Like, you know, if you really want to make yourself stand out, you kind of don't have to do the whole, you kind of have to avoid that doing stuff for shock value kind of thing, for one. But for another, like, I don't know, like, I kind of got off topic with the entire dark fantasy thing. I think I was trying to say, it doesn't, not that it doesn't take much with audiences these days, but more like, I feel like we could push for the old books of yesteryear that are just sort of like very carefully crafted, not just like the same old dark fantasy. That's never mind. That's like shitting on dark fantasy novels now, and we don't want to get into that. I think it's just that yeah, I don't really know how what the main thing that I was trying to say with that was. Just that trends shift, and also that there are a lot of books out there that really try their hands at executing aesthetics instead of actual meat. I think cryptic is articulating what I was trying to say before I lost my beat of thought. But basically, I think it's more sometimes you can tell something was written just to shock the audience, and not because the author really thought that was what went with the story plot. Yeah, basically. Or you can tell the difference between a book that was based on an aesthetic board and is basically the novel form of an aesthetic board, and a book that was very well plotted, in other words. Hutzel says, I'm here on most nights, I just don't talk. In that case, welcome. Hopefully, you have brought very good points to this conversation. I hope that you continue to talk. We love these points very much. Oakleaf says, talking about book talk and comps, I've realized that I wouldn't even begin to know how to market what I write now. I don't even know what genre niche I'm in. That's basically my problem. Like, also, I wish we had, like, a handy searchable list of books that fit specific, that weren't basically just like romance, dark fairy romance these days to look into, because I have no idea where to start searching for comps, not gonna lie. Cryptic says it's not that mysteries are tired, it's that sometimes the twist just exists to be unguessable by the audience. It's kind of funny that you bring that up, because I'm thinking back to like the Crimson Rogue review of Lightlark, and how that was literally one of the points that he brought up. Just like plot twist after plot twist, and nah, that's not how you bring plot twists into novel, my dudes. Oakleaf says, I write fantasy about guys trying to be good and avoiding conflict, and there's almost no fighting and nobody dies. It's very interpersonal with lots of world building background. High five. Like, I feel like a lot of fantasy these days is just like girls murdering. And there is definitely a time and place well, not time and place like that, but like there's definitely a place for that fiction. Like 100% I am here for the catharsis of feminine rage. But I also feel like that's all we get. And there's not really too much. It's sort of like how, remember whenever everybody was writing dystopian novels, and there was Hunger Games, there was Divergence, and then there were all the other ones, and it's sort of like at some point some of those books stopped saying what needed to be said with with dystopian novels, and just started adopting the aesthetic for the aesthetic reasons. And I feel like in this particular era, if we're going to go rage and political, you might as well actually like not go heavy-handed with it, but at the same time, like, no, want to like do it for the sake of saying something and not for the aesthetic of it. That's what I'm trying to say, I guess. Like, I don't know. Cryptic says Lightlark is exactly what I was thinking of. It. High five. Um, Also, shout out to Crimson Rogue. I think it was Crimson Rogue or it was Crow Collar. One of those two. I watched those videos very close together, and they both made very excellent points. I do highly recommend, if you're thinking about getting into the entire fiction business, like just to any other reader or listeners out there, but definitely look into like Crimson Rogue and Crow Collar, because they break down, what works, what doesn't, not only from like a reader's perspective, but also like from an actual writer's and critic's perspective. So you get like the mechanics of why things don't work or why things do work, and examples of how to do things, the quote-unquote how to do things better than whenever they're reviewing. It's all great. It's very educational. Oku says, Cryptic, I blame the unguessable twist thing on Game of Thrones, the show, and the whole subverting expectations BS that was actually just dropping every setup they made to be shocking. That makes a lot of sense, and I also hope that folks understand that the reason why Game of Thrones did that was to ensure that you were tuning in next week to continue watching. Like every single time that you watch Game of Thrones, HBO gets money, and you can't really write a book like that. That's not a good model to be writing a book from. I also kind of feel bad for George R.R. Martin because like they basically took his work and really ran with it. So for sure, I understand why he's still on hiatus. Hootzel says instead of advertising to a genre, try advertising a good story point. Like you like gay romance, political commentary? That is actually a really good idea. And that is also a good point because like cocktails can just be vibes. So it's sort of like you can definitely be like, oh, this is fantasy. I remember back in the day we used to do things like, oh, this is fantasy Sex in the City and stuff like that. It's totally doable. So I feel like comp titles are not something to be taken super duper literal. So for sure, that is an exit. Thank you for pointing that out. Cryptic says, oh, it's definitely been a problem since before Lightlark. I just meant that that was the first example that came to mind. Hootzel says, I pressed send way too early on accent. Totally cool. Feel free to add on the rest of that thought for sure, because that is a very good point. I also kind of don't want to go too deep because I realize that it's past 9 p.m. We should be starting the first sprint of the night, but this is also a really important and good discussion to have because I feel like comp titles have gotten, or folks have gotten a little bit too literal with comp titles these days. Comp titles aren't literally like this is just Gideon the Ninth all over again, just to throw things out there. It's more like this has the vibes of this. If you liked it, like, there are a lot of boards out there, like agent boards out there, that are now saying if you liked X, you'll like this book. Or if you liked XYZ, you'll like this book. And that is exactly what you should be thinking about whenever you think of comp titles. And it doesn't even have to be the same genre exactly. It really depends on the literary agent. Some will be like, so long as you get the vibes and it's the right genre, that's fine. That's perfect. Others will be like, it doesn't even have to be the right genre. Like, just make sure that I get what you mean whenever you deliver comp titles to me. But in any case, for sure, that is a good thing to keep in mind, and that's a good thing that I should probably keep in mind as I continue to look, because I'm not reading the rest of Dragonfall. I will probably still read the rest of Dragonfall just to get... I was told the back half of, the back third of Dragonfall was really good, and somebody told me the same thing about Gideon the Ninth whenever I was, on Chapter 5. I was like, I wanted to kill myself, but not, literally, but... I can say that because thoughts. But in any case, I want to just throw this across the river. So I have learned that don't judge a book by the first part that you read. I'm on page 200 of Dragonfall, so I'm still holding out that page 500 will start to pick up. But I'm hanging in there. We'll see where it goes. Oakley says, everyone please know that my kitten has joined us. He can't type, but he's here. We value the kitten. He will make very huge contributions to this discussion. Cryptic says, it's kind of like how in D&D it's not DM versus players. It's people having fun together. A good story always feels to me like the author wanted to share their characters and world with me. Yes. Stories like Lightlark feel like a vindictive DM imposing what they think is best, whether it makes sense or not, because they needed to beat you. 100% cryptic. And yeah, it's from what I understand, Light Lark was written very much like fan fiction, and you see that a lot in fan fiction because people are trying to get you to come back and continue reading. It's like the way I said about the HBO stuff. But the problem is with an actual finished novel, you need to have like a plan, a plot that makes sense and is consistent across the entire series that you're doing. Not just the first book, but also all the other books if you're doing a series. So it's like 100% that is problematic, and it's not fun to read. And if you read through that and got that same vibe, I commend you. But yeah. Anyway, it is currently 9:10. I do apologize for the 10-minute overlay. We really got into that, didn't we? So, with that said, we're going to start preparing for our very first sprint. We'll be starting in a couple of minutes. If you'd like to share what you're working on in chat, feel free. Give us a few details about what you've got brewing, what project that you're working on. Otherwise, I'm going to cut off the talking for just a second so that we can compose ourselves. Cryptic says it was fun convo. Thank you. It was very fun. Alright, that was a sec. I'm kind of rushing back in because it is 10 minutes late. My bad. But in any case, Cryptic says, my cat just thumped real hard into a box and scared me to death. So that's what you're working on, taming the cat. I wish you the best of luck with that. That said, cats doing cat things. Oakleaf says, I'm finally working on my Fantasy Wild West whip again. Hell yeah, high five. I am always here for Wild West stuff. And of course, you see the 90s AU. It will crawl up your screen as we work. But that having been said, we're just going to jump into it. So there are 20 minutes on the clock. Oakleaf says, no worries, we don't have to be strict with time. I very much appreciate that. I guess I'm a little bit nervous because I do know that we have a few more viewers than usual. There are a few more views both on Blue Sky and here, so like, hello. Normally, I would say normally we don't run this over, but we do. You will see on the first break on the other side of those 20 minutes. But if you're just joining us, we are doing a 20-minute sprint. The timer is on the bottom left, so if you'd like to keep along. If you don't want to keep along, I would suggest minimizing your window so that the timer doesn't glare at you for the entire time. But let us shake out those hands as usual. Take a deep breath. Let it out slowly. If you're not on your docs, get to your docs because we are going in just a sec. I wish you the best of luck and have fun in these next 20 minutes. Having been said, it is 9:13. I will see you on the other side. Get ready, get set, and here we go. that is our first break. I'm going to set a timer for 15 minutes. We're going to ignore the timer eventually, but you know, it's good to give us some idea of how much we're going to take. But that having been said, how did we do? Looks like I read through 15 words, which is not half bad considering the fact that my attention span is nowhere near anything. But how about the rest of you? Also, now is a good time to get up if you haven't yet and do a little bit of a stretch. One of the great things about the headphones that I had just come across, let me actually read out the chat first. Cryptic says, always good to have a timer to ignore, right? Douglas Adams said a nice related quote. Other than, actually, he had many good thoughts about time. One of my absolute favorite quotes in The Hitchhiker's Guide is, time is an illusion, lunchtime doubly so. But he also said, I like deadlines. I like the whoosh that they make whenever they go past. That man had fantastic ideas about time. But anyway, we don't really talk about Douglas Adams all that much anymore, do we? Like, the Hitchhiker's Guide was everywhere at one point, and then all of a sudden, it was nowhere. And now that I think about it, that's weird. I can't think of any specific scandal that was attached to him. I think we just kind of forgot he existed, which is a shame. The Hitchhiker's Guide is fantastic, by the way. Please do read that. Oakley says, my characters are decompressing after being attacked by a bounty hunter. That is a good thing to decompress from. I mean, the actual attack is not great, but I can forgive them for needing a little bit of decompression time. Also, hell yeah to downtime after an action chapter, right? Cryptic says, I was mostly just chilling, but I realized that one of my big things in my writing is people managing to understand each other despite immense differences. Hell yeah. Oakley says, yes, Cryptic, that's also one of my favorite things. It's also one of mine. Like, we often talk about... We were even having a little bit of a conversation about this before the sprint, but basically, you know how, like, all of the fiction out there is, like, dark nowadays, and it's great, but the problem that with all this dark literature is it's, in my opinion, very individualistic, in the sense that, you know, there's always going to be one badass doing all the things. It's just like chosen one stories. So we have things like, we want to talk about revolution, but for some reason it is very difficult to talk about revolution in fiction without putting somebody at the center of it. And I think that is one of the things that makes me very uninterested in a lot of the dark fiction about feminine rage. It's sort of like, it's one person usually just being very angry, and it's like, what? Well, I understand why we need anger in literature. I just wish that it was everybody being angry and working together with that anger, you know what I mean? Because ultimately, like, what makes a lot of actual real life efforts really beautiful is that we do come together across differences, and where, like, a revolution isn't one person leading a charge Joan of Arc style, it is multiple people working together. And in other words, I very much support the idea of literature that's about people who are coming together across differences, so long as, like, it's not just one, you know what I mean? So, hell yeah to that. But let me actually read the chat and see if I'm very off base with that. Hootzel says, I have never heard of Douglas Adams. Ooh. So, it's understandable. Douglas Adams... Actually, I think he wrote 2 series, and that was it. The one I have not yet read, but I've heard it's very good. It's called Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, I want to say. That also has its own adaptation that was kind of big not too long ago. So if you heard of Dirk Gently, that was originally Douglas Adams. But the thing that he's more famous for, he's done all those things, but he's just famous for these two things. The one that he's more famous for is called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It is a 4-book trilogy, and yes, you heard that correctly. That is basically British absurdist humor, but sci-fi. So it's about, it gets started, the way that kicks off is that a man named Arthur Dent finds out that his house is about to be demolished and he finds this out just as a bulldozer is about to come in. But in actuality, plans for the demolition of his house for a new bypass had been filed away for months, but due to bureaucracy, he didn't know that this was happening. That is just chapter 1. The rest of the book is the same thing, except aliens have decided to demolish the entire Earth for an interstellar bypass. And there are shenanigans that ensue because they succeed in this. It is hilarious. It is very random. It is basically everything that made Monty Python really good. Like if you've watched a Monty Python film and you thought it was hilarious and great, or if you've watched Monty Python's Flying Circus and thought that their portrayal of British society while still being extremely ridiculous was great, you will love The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It is, some of the books are a little bit longer, but they are very much worth the read. Even the later books that kind of got a little bit weird. 100% though, the first 2 are fantastic. Oakleaf says, I think the movie kind of broke Hitchhikers, which sucks. Oh yeah. And it's kind of like, I get that too. The movie was good in its own right, kind of like in the sense that a cult classic would be, but 100%, the book is infinitely better. The BBC series is also really good and a decent adaptation. The movie is just its own thing. It starts off nearly there and nearly nailing it. I do give Martin Freeman a lot of credit for pretty much nailing Arthur Dent. Zooey Deschanel as Trillian was a choice though, but oh my god, Mostef as Ford Prefect is just really made that movie. So there are really good bits to it. It just got murdered by critics when it came out, and a lot of the Hitchhikers fans understand very rightly, or said very rightly, by the way, that it was not a great adaptation. But in any case, Cryptic says, like, Thor is your classic son of rich as fuck CEO. The rest of the cast assumes it's great. He literally never spent time with his actual parents. Thor sounds like somebody who needs to be adopted. Cryptic says the stuff they buy him is mostly to get him to not bother them because they're busy. Aw. Hootzel says, Oakley says, Hootzel, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is a hilarious satirical sci-fi, truly classic and absurd. All my books are about characters helping each other and making each other better, helping each other heal, because that's what I want to see in the world. That's my fantasy, not being angry and alone. Amen. Like, that's why I find it really difficult to write from a place of anger, even if I'm kind of writing a revolution story as well. It's like, when I get why anger exists. Like, I've talked to people who write angry fiction. I've also watched or followed people who have written angry fiction, like, and their anger, in my opinion, is very justified. And I do feel that fiction is a great place to explore themes that you would otherwise never be able to say. But I also feel like a revolution isn't just anger. And I feel like I know that sounds weird and sounds a little bit out of touch because, like, we all have to be angry about what's going on in the world in order to enact change. Yes, 100%. But not everybody can muster the same flavor of anger. There's also defiance in a sense of fuck you, I'm going to continue on anyway, that kind of thing. There is a defiance in delirious joy, as it were. I'm not quite sure how to phrase that exactly, but you get what I mean. I personally cannot muster the same kind of anger. I just don't. I just feel very exhausted looking at the world and thinking to myself, I have to fight out of anger at that. No, anger is very tiring for me. So I have to approach it a different way. And I feel like that's a valid approach and that we should encourage it. And both, it's all about finding ways that you interact with the world and that you interact with revolutions and ideas and how you process what's going on around you. Any emotion that results in positive change is still a productive emotion. It doesn't matter if it's like this raw rage or just this defiant joy. It's like both get the job done, and we should definitely encourage both and have options for both and consider both valid. If you're not an angry person, please don't make yourself force yourself to feel the same sense of rage that fuels other people, because that's a good way to burn yourself out, in other words. Cryptic says yes, more of that. Mine is more people coming together to heal together in a found family sort of way, which is absolutely needed. Like, we also need healers in the days to come. Cryptic Oakley says, Cryptic, I'm shaking your hands, and Cryptic gives a shaking hands emoji. Hootsu says, does the gown has a theme if it's not prevalent in multiple characters? I mean, that's how you explore themes, by showing how characters respond differently to said theme. Yeah, absolutely. Any moment where, you explore any vehicle where you explore a certain idea still counts, in my opinion. Like, you can definitely have a bunch of side characters or a single side character go on their own character arc, and that is still a theme, in my opinion. Especially if it gets a decent amount of screen time. I think, anyway. Oakleaf says, Martin Freeman out here really carrying both Hitchhikers and The Hobbit on his shoulders. LOL. That man always plays exhausted characters, and we can understand why. Oakley says, writing from a place of anger. I intentionally wrote a character whose primary motivation was anger because it's a very uncomfortable emotion for me, and still resulted in a character trying to be better out of anger. And his anger in defense of people he loved. I can't deal with this solipsistic anger. A lot of current books. Solipsistic anger of a lot of current books, yes. Even though I recognize some people feel that way. Exactly. Same here, honestly, and I guess that's why I keep on going back to like dark fantasy and how I can't jive with it myself. Because 100%, like I keep saying, like, I've met people who are like, I have to write this feminine rage book because that is what I feel, and it's important for me to be full of rage and to express my rage. And I'm like, yes, hell yeah, please do so. That is your art. It's just one thing that we need to, I'm not saying that the people who are feeling rage need to do this. I'm saying that we ourselves, if we feel uncomfortable expressing rage, we should not force ourselves to express rage. We should be allowed to express whatever we want. We should be allowed to read books whatever books that we want, and anything that fulfills us and recharges us and makes us ready for what we need to do out there. It's like I said just a moment ago. So at the very least, we have past 15 minutes, so we can go back whenever. But in any case, it's like I was saying earlier about how damn, now I lost my train of thought. Any emotion that gets the job done is still a productive emotion. So whether it's rage or whether it's delirious joy, experience what feels right to you to process what's going on around you and to make sense of it, and to help each other push forward. However you can phrase the emotions that are going through you, and when you look at the world, that's what's important. So rage, yes, is important, but rage is not for everybody. In other words, it's sort of like how metal music isn't for everybody. I'm not going to ask everybody to become a metalhead that throws themselves into mosh pits. Some people are just folksy folk people and would prefer folk. But it's all music in the end, and whatever recharges you and puts you forward. I feel like a lot of emphasis is placed on the importance of literature as a vehicle to teach and a vehicle to express what's going on around us. And I feel like it comes from this weird, almost, I'd hate to say it, but it's a little bit how a lot of people are weird about books. And I say that because it comes off as very much almost similar to how some people felt about college, as in you're dumb if you're not, or you're not as intelligent if you don't go to college. So in the same sense, you're not as intelligent if you don't read books and you don't experience this sort of the same kind of literature. It's a sense of elitism, and it's specifically academic elitism. And we place a lot of emphasis on books, and I say this as somebody who has made books the cornerstone of their entire life. But one important thing to remember is that books, yes, are words, so therefore we can put explicit messages in them and be as either heavy-handed or light-touched as we want to be, both haha pun and also in terms of politics. But we often lose sight of the idea that they're ultimately a form of art. So if we don't demand the same standards and expectation from, say, music or, say, visual art, if we don't demand the same expectation of, like, somebody who's drawing furry art as we do for books, then we shouldn't have that same expectation for books. So in other words, we shouldn't push ourselves to create art that makes us feel this wave of rage because it's political and because we think that it's politically right. The paradoxical thing, in my opinion, is that the less that you do that, and the more that you talk about the world around you in the way that feels most natural and true to how you process things, the truer art that you craft, and therefore the clearer the message you get across. So a lot of people don't do rage very well. They just don't. They think that they do, but a lot of people come from places where they haven't really had a need to be angry. So consequently, when they're angry, they're just angry. They don't really have that same emphasis in their messages. So we should also just kind of encourage, instead of trying to be angry for the sake of being angry, think about what's going on in the world. Where do you fit in the days to come? Are you really going to be like full of rage, or are you going to be a healer who's going to help build? Because there are people in need of who need to be everywhere in that community. It's not just like we all need to be on the front. We all need to take up arms. We also have to think about what comes after. So like 100% books that are about healing and coming together and being a community are as necessary as the idea of fighting. So that's my take on it anyway. Cryptic says No Wrong Heroes is very much born from people who are tired deep down and give each other somewhere safe to rest, whether that be the acceptance or monetarily, whatever they can do to help their friends, which is fantastic and extremely valid. Cryptic says, I think I just figured out the actual important parts of the plot of No Wrong Heroes. Oakleaf says, that breakthrough moment happens, Cryptic, and indeed it does, and I'm here for it. Like, hell yeah, congratulations on the breakthrough, Cryptic. Feel free to share, unless it is that literal sense of community, at which point I am so here for that. Like, that is like something that we absolutely need in literature nowadays. Like, I know found family is also a trope, but like, I don't think that there are many stories specifically about that feeling of an entire community actually coming together. You have found family as an incidental thing or as a strictly queer thing, but not as like a general thing. Like, it's fantastic when it's a queer thing. Less so whenever it's incidental. Let that found family come through, my babes. But still, I would love to see it more in fiction, is what I'm saying. 100%, let people come together, build that community, and heal. Oakleaf says, rage does not equal violence, and I think a lot of books get that wrong. Correct. Rage is not always violence, and furthermore, rage is not always cynicism. This is also something that a lot of them get wrong. Like, I feel like that is something that goes on with a lot of all these dark fantasy things. Like, everybody wants to be like doom gloom. Oh, it's just rage. That is something that was really putting me off with Dragonfall. In fact, you have these elements of a dystopia fantasy world, like a caste system that's kind of like vaguely vaguely described, and wealthy poor divide, for example, or the main character is an outcast and he lives in a place where there are thieves, but we don't really get a sense of how many, or if there's crime, we're just told that there's a lot of crime and we're shown a couple of thieves, one person who swears a lot, and a prostitute, things like that. Oh, we kind of sort of get a gritty little gritty little glimpse of a single street, but the main character's apartment is actually in the back of a very nicely put together shop, and we don't really see like the actual struggle of the day-to-day average person who's not a fucking criminal. It's really difficult to take a world seriously when it's that kind of dark. Like, when it's a dark that is just like all assassins, all criminals, all terrible people, but no actual people struggling. It kind of comes out and it kind of tells me that there's something missing in that world. But that is what a lot of people think that dark, gritty, and even a little bit angry is like these days. You get all these books about anger, and they're basically same thing. It's not like the system. You get a good view of how a system is fucking over people. You just get a view of one person and how shitty their specific life is, and it's like so frustrating because you want to be like, I want to have a reason to root for you to burn the world down, and I'm not getting it. Anyway. Cryptic says that too, Oakleaf. Oakleaf says rage can be constructive, productive, motivating, connecting. In trying to become comfortable with my own capacity for anger, I have tried to understand that for myself. Yes. That is also a difficult thing. I commend you for that. Cryptic, I'm also kind of reading through the chat. I do apologize for not super duper staying with some comments, but I keep on going off, and then people are like having conversations, and I accidentally like leave out really important points that they're saying. So let's go through this. Cryptic says the main fantasy conflict is a shared dream. So when they're able to meet and be there for each other, to help with their real world problems, then they can deal better with the fantasy fighting in their dreams. And then by the end, they actually have a support network to deal with the actual world. Oh, right. That's what No More Heroes is about. Which is, hell yeah. Like, that is a good point because, like, I remember you talking about this work in progress. And now that you mention it, having, like, it is about dream walking, and that would be a thing that could definitely use like, it could be heavy because like your dreams are super psychological, like super heavy with your own psyche. So it's super intimate to be able to share your dream, even if it's like a shared dreamscape. That like sleep is when you're dreaming is when you're most vulnerable, right? So like makes sense. I mean, I say this all despite kind of not knowing what your dream system is like nowadays. What the dream, how the dreamscape works for for No More Heroes now. I think it's been like a couple years since we last talked about it or something like that. So, Hootzel says, found family is such a delightful trope though, right? Like, it's so cute and awesome and also a little bit cathartic whenever it's done in like queer literature, because like that's basically how the queer community works. It's fueled by found families, and it's awesome to have people be able to talk about that and talk about their experiences being accepted by people who aren't blood relatives, because our queer ancestors essentially didn't have that luxury, or didn't have the luxury of being accepted by their families. Like, you didn't have parents who were totally chill with you with you coming out as trans and whatnot. And that was only not too long ago, but at least like the younger generations are starting to experience that acceptance. And one of the biggest parts of queer history is not having that and being able to find people like you through found families like that. It's so amazing. But also, like, when you're take that concept away from outside of the context of queer fiction, it's like also very healing, because it's also like you can need that acceptance for a bunch of different things, and it's for a bunch of different reasons, and it's like this full exploration of what love is and what it means to be bonded to other people, and it's just so cute and amazing and healing. And please do more found family. Oakleaf says, I love that cryptic. Found family is indeed a delight. People need each other. Dragonfall sounds very frustrating. It is. Like I said, somebody told me that like the back third is okay, so I am. It got returned automatically via Libby, and I didn't bother to renew my hold, because I only get like 2 week holds, and it's ebook only. So it's sort of like there's only so much that I can read before it has to go back. But I might buy a copy and just read through it, and then like buy it in paperback, read through it, and then there are small libraries all over the place near where I live. I'll just pop it in there whenever I'm done. But or tiny libraries, I mean, which are really cool, by the way. If you're be on the lookout if your neighborhood does one because they are so cool. Uh, but in any case, yeah, it's very slow paced. Um, it's a romantic fantasy, basically. It's a romantasy, just straight up romantasy. I can't remember how much spice this is supposed to have, but it is a gay romantasy about a thief and a dragon who are forcibly bonded, and they go from it's basically enemies to lovers, and which is not a trope I like either anyway, because enemies to lovers I feel is very tedious. I don't really get the same uh, sexual tension that other people seem to get from it. Um, But in any case, like I'm very much like I need tenderness with my growing love. That's why I love Friends to Lovers instead. Like it's the longing and the set and the intimacy of and the intimacy before they even become a couple, that kind of thing, and the cuteness and the fluff and the ride or die-ness. Like, I love me romantic partners who are already like, I would die for you, and you are my best bro. um, that's why Nick and Eleanor are written like that. I just kind of like want to do like a little side conversation about that, but like, it's one of the things that I'm actually looking forward to, and it's something that I'm really not getting across well with all of the pitches that I've been doing lately, because I've taken out Eleanor's point of view, but reading through this chapter in particular, I'm remembering, this story is sort of like Eleanor accidentally falls in love with her best friend, and her best friend, meanwhile, has been pining for her for years, and it is the most fucking adorable thing. Because these two have not admitted their love for each other. One of them hasn't even realized she's in love with him. And already they're like, I would fucking die for you. I would, who do you need to have beaten up? I will do that for you. And that is their relationship in a nutshell. Like, I just love that like cute platonic dedication, and it blossoms into this fun little I already know all your weaknesses and I would more than happy to exploit them kind of thing. But only it's like a different sense than the enemies to lovers. Whereas with enemies to lovers, it's like I know all of your secrets and all of your weaknesses. I will exploit them. Uh, with friends to lovers, it's like I know all of your weaknesses, and you damn well better believe I am going to exploit them for fun, profit. And by the way, I'm filming this, and we're going to have a good time. Ha ha ha! Nudge nudge. It's like dunking on your best friend, and that, honestly, that's how real life relationships work. I've noticed, like, uh, I'm in not only Final Fantasy FC, but also a static raid group, and there are a lot of people who are like married or in long-term committed relationships, and it's like a lot of them just like and when I say a lot of them are in these committed relationships, I mean both partners are in the FC or on the raid team. It's great. The ones who last the most are the ones who keep on dunking on each other. And I feel like there's a certain level of trust where you know it, you know where how much is too far and you know when to stop, but you also realize it's all in good fun and you're expressing, hey, I still love you even though you're even though you leave your fucking dishes in the sink at the end of the day. But I think that's why I like Friends to Lovers too, because to me it's a little bit realer. Um, that is something that I thought the ex and I had, but he would always go a little bit too over the line and wouldn't listen whenever I'd say stop. So I feel like that kind of explains a lot of our relationship and where it went wrong. But that also is, the main point. Like, a good relationship is knowing where that line is and never crossing it. And that is something that I kind of try to capture with my romance, is what I'm saying. Let's see. Cryptic says, I feel like you got it exactly. Cryptic says, I do personally like enemies to lovers, but they have to be so painfully similar yet incredibly different, if that makes sense. Like, they have to be the only people that can ever understand each other, and they need a way to safely end that aggression towards each other. Oakleaf says, I like enemies to lover under very specific dynamic circumstances. A lot of it just feels icky. Oh man, Jack said, the book with the character motivated by anger, he's paired with a guy he rescues on the road, and they end up being deeply platonically ride or die for each other. I would fucking read the shit out of that. Especially if the character, with the guy he rescues, it serves as, like, a balance for that. A balance for that anger, because, like, I don't know, like, it can work both ways now that I think about it. Like, characters who are platonically ride or die for each other, but still serve as the gasoline for their partner's anger is just as fun and funny as somebody who's like, I am the fucking water to your fire. I understand that you're motivated by anger and you are justified, but we're not going to do the murder today. Both approaches are very valid and very fun to write, for sure. Cryptic says, it's so easy to mess up enemies to lovers. It can be too one-sided so easily. Exactly. Or it could just go on and be too top-heavy with the, sexual violence as sexual tension kind of thing. At certain points, it's just sort of like, okay, we get it. You're Batman, he's Joker, and you guys like knife fighting. Haha, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I don't know, like, I think it's about a sort of sexual tension that I just don't get, so. Oakleaf says, my favorite dynamic is trust. There's a point when the anger guy offers to do violence for his partner, and he realizes he feels safe offering that to the one person who will never ask him to do it. Okay, see, that is so cute, actually. Like, absolutely. There's a certain air of intimacy with trust. I mean, trust and intimacy go very much hand in hand, but in my opinion, it's like just tighter and more beautiful when there's that level of trust that's baked into it. Cryptic says, Homestuck is definitely the reason I like enemies to lovers, because, like, Kismet was so fascinating to me. Because it's a relationship you want to keep going because it drives you to be better because you have a rival. They don't want to kill each other. That is true. Homestuck in general had very fascinating ideas. Like, I also liked the club one. With the one with I can't remember Homestuck names off the top of my head, but basically one of them acted as a marriage counselor to the other two. That was also fun. But yeah, I did like the idea, or I did like how Homestuck just came right out and said, hey, there are multiple ways to have a relationship, and by the way, here are all the fun and unhealthy ones. Auspices. Auspices? Something like that. I've never... I think that's correct, but I just don't know how to pronounce it. But yes, that is the one. It definitely has auspice somewhere in there. But yeah, like, God, that's another thing that we just stopped talking about. Although that one I know why. It starts with a D and rhymes with Ashcon. Cryptic says, love Morales too. The trolls spread their deep relationships out so it's not all on one person. Yes, yes. I just loved Nepeta on that note. Like, feel like she was like the poster child of Morales because she kept on trying to form them with a bunch of different people, but she, of course, got Equus, but, you know, just in general. But, God, she explained it so well, and it was so cute. And I do miss her. But yes, as cringe as Homestuck was, or as cringe as we liked to say Homestuck was a couple years ago, I don't know if we're still saying that is. It was this massively important piece of internet literature. I'm not sure if I would recommend people to read it, especially since think I'm not sure how well preserved its Flash elements were, so I don't know if you can, but it is definitely a thing. It is one of the longest pieces of literature to read through, and most of it is done in chat logs that are not very well accessible, let's just say. So read at your own risk, but it is a piece of internet history, and honestly, it did have a lot of good ideas. It's just a lot of good ideas that were buried in chat logs from like 2003. The chat styles from 2003, not the actual comic. And the chat logs are done in rainbow colors and with all kinds of typing quirks that make it nigh unreadable, and there's so much happening all at once. Cryptic says she shipped her friends. Nepeta was like the most relatable character if you get when you get right down to it. Cryptic says, how about that animated pilot that's dropping soon? Jesus Christ, I should not be surprised that there's an animated pilot. I should also probably think that that might be why we haven't heard about it lately, because rights are a fun thing. But, damn. Cryptic says, if you want to read it optimally, you need to find someone who can give you the unofficial Homestuck collection. AH took it down. Jeez. That's why. Okay. Also, fuck yeah. I mean, I get why you did that, but damn. That was the one with the flash bits preserved too, right? Because I feel like that's familiar. And I feel like that's what they did. But like I get why he did that, if so, but at the same time, it's Hootzel says animated Homestuck done by Vivzy Pop with the main character voiced by Toby Fox, if I remember correctly. Oh Jesus. Oh Jesus, the fandom that's gonna be on that thing. I'm gonna stay out here and not participate in fandom in that fandom. How's that? Cryptic says yes, it basically has a web browser emulator to run the flashes. Right, okay. So yeah, like I was saying, I understand why he would not be cool with an unofficial archive of his work created, but at the same time, it's like, with Flash as it is, you know, it gotta archive your stuff, dude. This is, it was art. Like, you definitely have a say as the author, for sure, and the artist, and somebody who put in thousands upon thousands of hours. But, you know, act of love and all. Anyway. Oakleaf says, the loss of Flash was a freaking tragedy. So many old games I loved gone, right? A lot of content. God, a lot of it. Like a lot of the old stuff of the internet is just gone because it wasn't as famous as like the end of the world or most of albino black sheep and stuff like that. And it's all lost media, and that boggles my mind to think about. But also, I'm thinking about it now or I've thought about it recently because my favorite games back in the day were called Crimson Room, Viridian Room, that series. It spawned an entire genre, but it was basically the origins of the entire escape room thing. Like, if you've heard of escape rooms, they are all based on these flash games where you were stuck in a room and you had to solve puzzles to get out. And Crimson Room was the first and probably the most notorious at the end of that entire fad. But they were so much fun to play, and I found a Flashpoint archive of Crimson Room, but it's unplayable because there's this one part that that forces you to go to a different website that has its own Flash player, and that was not preserved. And I cannot find Viridian Room anywhere, or I feel like I can't find Viridian Room anywhere. I haven't really looked that hard. Blue Room's not anywhere. White Room's gone. White Chamber's gone. My Diamond Baby, which was not a related game, that I can't find. There was also this one called Modus, Mystery of Time and Space, I do believe. That's entirely gone too, and that one was weird because it used to be this huge thing in the online gaming space, but I can't find that anywhere either, so it's super weird. Yeah, that's when Hootzel says, yeah, that's one hell of a combination. Cryptic says, on the games front, you can always see if Flashpoint has them. Oh, this was after recommending it as the way to read the comic for about a year or so. Oakleaf says, ooh, did you play Submachine? It was also very escape room before escape rooms. I don't believe I have. That name, unfortunately, does not sound familiar to me. But I will poke around and see if there are any like archives either on Flashpoint or like old gaming walkthroughs. Now I kind of want to look up Motus. It's also 10:21, so we should probably get into the next one, but let me just see real quick. Mystery of Time and Space. There we go. Ooh. When did this come out? There's oh, 6 years ago. Okay. There's a Reddit post about how Modus is now available in its entirety on Flashpoint, so I will take a look at that. Because I do miss playing Modus, and maybe I'll do that after. It's also still on an albino black sheep. That is cool. And archive.org. That is so cool. Modus was awesome. Cryptic says Flashpoint is also updating quite often, so that is definitely good to know. I will have to comb through Flashpoint and see if it has the other Crimson Room games and My Diamond Baby, because I do miss those. But in any case, it's already 10:23, so, and we are only on sprint 2 of 3. So I feel like this is a good point where we can break it off and dive right into the next one. With that said, taking a deep breath, centering ourselves. I'm putting 20 minutes back on the clock. And for sure, like, you can still pitch in, like, game recs to me because I will definitely be doing that until, like, 2 a.m. after we're done with the stream. But in any case, deep breath in, 20 minutes. Good luck, and I will see you on the other side. Oop, there we go. All right, that is sprint number 2. How did we do? Let's see. 1267 words here, which isn't too bad considering the fact that it is getting a little bit late right now. Uh, page 6 out of 11. That's not bad though. That is actually really good. I should be able to finish up the rest of this chapter by the end of the week. It's going to be a little bit dicey. Um, Wednesdays are raid nights, and Thursday I have to prepare the. I mean, it's already drafted. I just need to finish off the post and queue up chapter 2 on Beehive. Again, it is free on Beehive for subscribers only. But basically, Wednesday and Thursday are going to be fun. My weeks have been fun lately. I need to find time to do adult things. But before I get too much into it, let's see. Oakleaf says William and Sly is free on Steam and very relaxing. One of my old favorites, and I will definitely be Googling that as we continue on with this break. Oakleaf says characters are finally having a conversation I've been waiting for IRL months. I love this for you. Congratulations on finally getting to the thing, and hopefully it is coming out just as much as, or just the way that you hoped it would, as it's been percolating for months. If not, that's what drafts are for. So either way, I hope that you're having fun with it, and may it be a relief to finally get it down on paper. I take it that for the characters, it's going very well. Wink, wink. But anyway, yeah, how's everybody else doing? Aha. Cryptic says, just chilling, as No Wrong Heroes fits into place in my brain. That is totally a-okay. Planning is a very important stage. Man, that just reminds me that I need to start planning. I still plan on starting to draft the next Nameless Song draft starting in September, and I have no plans for it. Oakley says, I mean, one character does have a minor gunshot wound, so, like, they've been better. So it's going well, and they're enjoying it. Wink. I mean, they're not dead yet. Wink. I'm kidding. But in any case, that does sound like a very tender moment, and I do hope that you're enjoying writing it. But yeah, I am not ready for the rest of the week / rest of the month. I'm thinking about various things in general. I might slow down with pitch events, to be honest with you. As far as I can tell, there aren't really any scheduled. I say that without actually checking the schedule. Just 1 second while I check Blue Pit real quick, because they know all. I know that First Line Pit has just made an announcement, because I'm definitely not checking Blue Sky while I'm on stream. But they've just made an announcement that they've gone Insta only, and quite honestly, after last night's discussion, and I will not go too deeply into it, but let's just say the problem with mentioning Twitter and certain spaces is that, or mentioning anything in certain spaces is that you have to be very careful on Blue Sky about who you attract. For the most part, Blue Sky is a very relaxed environment, very casual, and it's a very safe space to be somebody who is not widely accepted in society, as it were. But there are also a lot of angry people on Blue Sky. So I would make an innocuous post. Actually, I made two yesterday, so I feel like one of them is safe to talk about, really. But it was the one where I was talking about how the clock that dipshit had given me. So it was a clock, an analog clock, and was very pretty actually. And I regret that I have to throw it away, but it is covered with broken glass, and I kind of don't want to try to break it even more to try to clean it up. And anyway, it's kind of cheap, and the glass was there for a reason. But it was the evolutions arranged in a clock on the clock. So like you had, actually I have a picture of it. I don't know why I'm trying to go off of memory, but like Espion would be one of the, yes, I also have that. So you had like Umbreon as 12 o'clock, and Vaporeon as 1 o'clock, Leafeon as 2 to 3, and so on and so forth, all the way around. And, it was very pretty and very lightweight, and I figured I'm going to put it up in my kitchen because I want to have a clock there so that I can time myself whenever I'm like making bread, or if I'm cooking, I'll have a clock right there so I know, oh shit, I need to go and speed things up so that I can go because I have raid tonight or something like that. It was very handy too, but the problem is I put it on a command hook, and apparently, though it was like a very well reviewed set of command hooks, because yes, I use Amazon. I live in the suburbs. A lot of stuff, and I don't own a car, so a lot of stuff is not really accessible to me. That's why I use it a lot. But in any case, I bought this pack of command hooks, and I clean up the wall. I stick it on. I press it for 30 seconds, just like the package says, and then I set the clock on it, and it's good for a year and a month. And then the other night, I wake up at 5 a.m. to something that's just like bang, bang, crash. And I get up and I shuffle over to the kitchen, and there's this dark shape in the middle of my living room. I'm like, what the hell is that? It turns out it's the clock. It had crashed into my table because there's a table under there, then crashed into the kitchen tile, shattered its face all over the floor. Well, actually not super duper all over the floor. Shockingly, the glass actually came off in very large pieces, and just like a bunch of smaller bits that went into the clock and were blocked from falling out by the larger pieces. It was like the neatest thing, but at the same time, it was also sort of like, ah. So, I had to throw the clock away because it shattered. And there's glass everywhere. So that got thrown away, and I made a skeet on Blue Sky about how, haha, even God wants me to forget this man because he gave this clock to me ages ago because my partner basically knew exactly 3 things about me, or 4 things about me. Number 1, I like to write. Number 2, I liked Pokemon when we first met. Number 3, I like cats. And number 4, I like Van Gogh. So he would get me gifts based on one of those 4 things, sometimes even combination. But this was one of the Pokemon gifts. So I did keep a lot of the stuff that he gave me. There's still some things that I need to get rid of that are just kind of taking up space and collecting dust. But like I wanted to keep the useful things, you know? But I made a haha skit being like, hey, even God wants me to give this up. And anybody who knows me knows that, yeah, I'm Jewish, but like, I don't really hold God in that high of a regard. Otherwise, I wouldn't be spelling out God. I wouldn't be writing about polytheistic religions and things like that. I would kind of be a little bit more, well, careful with how I observe religion. I don't even like remember holidays. Like, to me, religion is a complicated subject, and I kind of like I more identify with the culture than the actual religion. And this is because, you know, for most of my childhood, I grew up with more that because if you also knew me, you'd know that I'm a mestiza, and my mother is not the Jewish one, which is a thing in Jewish communities. Like you were kind of othered if you're not seen as the proper Jew in some communities. But I don't think that's also why I was othered. I think it was also just because like my neighborhood was overall white and it was weird to have a brown person running around. But it was kind of like a little bit weird in the fact that being Jewish growing up was almost like a competitive sport. Some people were more Jewish than others. Oakley says, as a fellow culturally Jewish person, religion is complicated. Is in fact very Jewish of you. Well, yeah, you get it. So like, I don't really I don't go to shul. I don't even belong to a synagogue, mostly because most of them charge like shit tons of money to get into. I don't know if that's true outside. I've lived in large cities for most of my adult life, so like all the ones that I lived in, charge an arm and legs just so that you can be a part of their synagogue. But I don't know if that's true in the suburbs. But that's one of the biggest reasons why I never really attached myself to a synagogue. Also, moving around a lot. And also, I just don't feel super connected with the way that Judaism was, or I didn't feel connected with the way Judaism was taught to me as a child, and I don't feel like going to a different synagogue would change that at all. I know every synagogue is different, and the one that I grew up in was kind of like a little bit weird, but still. But anyway, the point is, like, I don't really believe that God has a plan for all of us and that God has direct influence. Whenever I say, haha, even God wants this to happen, it's a joke. I am joking. That post was haha funnies. I'm saying, oh, look, an act of God happened. It's just so ridiculous and unexplainable that clearly this must be God. But, like, so many, there are apparently a few atheists. And also, if you knew me at all, you know that I am very much broken up with this man. I am processing the emotions attached to this man. This man has been out of my life for, well, it depends on how you count it. If we talk about physical distance, we literally left our shared apartment in June, or yeah, the beginning of June, and then but we lived in the same city supposedly. He lied about that, but we'll get to that. But he led me on for like several months, saying, "Hey, we'll get together, we'll get together." Uh, then finally, in like September, he started really ghosting me, and then late October, early November, I finally sent him the "get fucked" text, as I like to call it. So he's out of my life completely. And if you've been following me for a while and if you've been talking to me, you know that. But I do have these depressive moments because it was it came on just the way that it ended is there was no closure, and it basically took me by surprise. He did lead me on, and he also took me for a financial ride. If you also knew me, I am up to my eyeballs in debt because he left it to me. But basically, you would know all this stuff if you talked to me. But then you'd have randos coming in, being like, "Yeah, you should break up with him." I'm like, "I already did." Or this one dude came in and he's like, "Well, gods don't exist, but as you know, gods and goddesses don't exist." I'm like, "Jesus fucking Christ!" But if you're assigning symbolism to this, that means you're subconscious. And I'm like, "You sound like my ex." But yeah, like there are people who come in hot at the most random things. There's that post, and there was also this other post that I made where it was sort of like, if somebody is telling you to go out and touch grass, that's usually just a time to step back. And a lot of people got super offended by that as well. So a lot of people were like, "Yeah, absolutely, I agree with you. Stepping out and touching grass is very healing for the soul." And then there was this one person who flipped out and was like, that's not what it literally means. How dare you?" And I'm like, "Okay, now I'm disabling replies." But it's sort of like people feel the need to offer their opinion on things, and I didn't ask for them. But that's just how social media works. Like, you have a lot of angry people online who don't have anything else to do with their time but be angry at other people that they don't know all that well. That's kind of what happened whenever I brought up Twitter last night, which is basically that I said, a lot of people on Poster Pit seem to have been on Twitter. Maybe I should. I said something basically. What I meant to say was basically, I might be shooting myself in the foot professionally if I don't go on Twitter. Maybe I should consider it. And a lot of people are like, "I would never ever join that Nazi platform," or "I left that Nazi platform and you're only ever going to find Nazis there." And it's such a shame that some people don't their morals are so weak-willed. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, like all I want is to talk about where people are going in terms of the industry. You can talk about that. But like, it's every single platform has its own moral failings. Here's the thing: Twitter is a Nazi cesspool. Yes, I was there for a couple of months, and I just couldn't jive with it. A lot of it was very stressful. It was either that the writing community felt very competitive to me, or the algorithm kept feeding me all the shit. Blue Sky, everybody is angry, and nobody actually. And there are people who will talk to you for sure, but some people will talk at you. The Twitter thread is a great source of that because I had a lot of people who were supposedly following me, yet they felt the need to get really vitriolic about what they were saying. And very patronizing about what they were saying, and that's why I disabled comments on that, because it felt like you're following me for a reason, yet you feel the need to talk down to me, and I don't feel comfortable with that. I don't know how to continue a conversation with that, and I don't feel like you're here to have a conversation, so I'm going to disable comments because I'm tired of getting these comments. You have a lot of people who are doing that, just in general, about not just Twitter, but like things like clocks and things about like positivity, like all kinds of dumb shit that ultimately does not matter. Um, and you, but at the same time, like it's kind of like Tumblr in the sense that you can't advertise there because nobody pays attention to advertisements. Tumblr is basically everybody. It's not a place to go if you want to sell anything in general. It's not necessarily dead. It's just that it's very insular and nobody actually pays attention to you unless you happen somehow to be the person of the month or liked by a very specific subset of people. Uh, and then you get into the morally ambiguous ones like Twitter's that moral thing where you shouldn't be you very rightly should not be supporting that one because it's a cesspit, but it's a cesspit because it's that massive and also because of who leads it. But like as we've recently found, that leadership can be anywhere. Um, Insta is a product of Meta, so you shouldn't be going on there. Not that I personally prefer Insta anyway because it is very. I've taken a look at Threads, and Threads is not a great place for reading comprehension. I don't have a Threads. I just go on Insta for bees, and it keeps on showing me posts of thread that I could be missing on Threads. Um, let's see. TikTok is TikTok, and that is an. I don't really want to show my face, but also TikTok is TikTok, and that's entirely whole different rabbit hole. It's like no matter which way you cut it, it's like there's no decent place to be if you're a writer. And honestly, this goes back to the pitch things because I don't want to get another platform for pitch events. Blue Sky is probably the best place if you want to do pitch events, in my opinion, because at the very least, the community is decent. Um, and the community, it's probably the safest place to go if you want to talk. If you don't want to sell, and you don't plan on selling, I've found that it's a really good place to find your people, essentially. You do have decent conversations, you do have people who aren't super weird about opinions. And if you curate things right and you don't stray too far and don't go super viral, like if you hit that sweet spot of things that are relatable enough to comment on, but not so relatable that they escape containment, you find a really good spot with Blue Sky, and that's a very enjoyable spot. It's a spot full of discussion and connection, and that's why I get through pitch events on Blue Sky. But I've done so many of them lately that it feels like I'm talking about the same story over and over and over again, looping into different years. And I'm afraid that at some point people are just going to be like, you haven't produced anything, so we're bored now. I feel like that's what happened on Tumblr as well. But there's that's the reason why I'm thinking about slowing down. The other reason is just like burnout. Like I'm finding it really difficult to muster the energy to prepare properly, and I felt that way with all the pitch events lately. But also, like, if we keep on having pitch events that just happen elsewhere, like, I kind of don't want to follow them. So, like, unfortunately, I'm not going to be participating in First Line Pit. I might still observe like the next poster pit that happens on like Twitter just to see what kind of discussion is going on there. Because no, I'm not going to get my Twitter back up and active, but like it's still a community of writers, and some of those writers are on Blue Sky. It's like, who are those people, you know? One annoying comment that was made to that thread last night was, you will get nothing but bigots and so forth reading your stuff. And I'm just thinking to myself, well, a lot of the people who have commented about, or there are people in this thread who also have Twitter accounts, and like, if I'm saying, I want to know those people, like, I don't think it's right to call them, like, there are definitely bigots there, but I don't feel like the people who have one foot in Twitter and one foot in Blue Sky are those people, you know what I mean? But 100% is a very large place, and I am kind of curious. I'm not sure I want to go too deep into the accounts that have left Blue Sky for Twitter, you know, because like they're if you left Blue Sky completely for Twitter, then you prefer that community over Blue Skies, and it is very clear that you would kind of like forgive certain things, or you might be a certain kind of person. And that's part of the reason why I kind of want to observe a pitch event, to get a solid footing about what kind of person would be on Twitter, and you know who's out there. It's not to get to know the enemy, as it were. It's just to be like, you know, I need to understand for myself what this is. And I feel like it's discouraged in some spaces to want to do research into these things and find out for yourself. Like, obviously, we're not saying go on the bad places in Reddit or go on the bad places in 4chan, things like that. But, like, Twitter, or a sizable writing community is over on Twitter. A huge chunk of the industry is over on Twitter. It's more about understanding a world that I happen to coexist in, because like it or not, Blue Sky is not fully separate from the world of that is Twitter. It exists alongside it. We are both part of a larger world that is writing, and that world over there happens to dictate the industry. So, like, some dude can say all they want that I should be focusing on building up the audience that I want to have. Sure, yeah, everybody's going to do that, but it's easier to do that if you're fucking self-published. If you're thinking about going trad, you're going to have to understand where the industry is and who's in it and how this shit works. Like, it's not nefarious to want to do research, and I am so fucking tired of having to say that. Like, I'm not saying, you know, I'm going to jump into the bad places. I am saying I need to arm myself with knowledge so that I can navigate these spaces that I'm considered, not even like Twitter as a space. I'm talking about the fucking trad publishing industry, because I want to query. I need to know how it works fully. And that's what that post was about, and people just kind of like, oh, I'm going to take this as my rage bait. And it's like, God, I'm just so tired. Anyway. But yeah, it's that kind of sentiment that just made me want to just step back for a bit and focus on what I should be focusing on, which is getting the next draft off the ground. So I have put a lot of thought into it, and I think I'm just going to withhold from participating in pitch events for September, so that there's going to be a lot going on in September anyway. Like, family's coming up. There are work events that I need to see about. It's my birthday month. I'm still going to be running the release of the Infinite Sadness, and on top of everything else, I need to dive into the next draft. And I haven't done a proper draft in months, as you know, because I was doing a trash draft last month, and I haven't actually written in over half a month. So it's like, yeah, I just have to sit down and focus, basically. But anyway, that is the thought process of the night. Also, like, on top of things, I still don't have a plan for what I want to do. Like, I have these flashes of this book structure, but I'm also a little bit like, the problem with the last draft is that I wanted to do too much, and part of it had slowed down the pacing. Like one beta reader had rightly pointed out that it took so long to get Mick to turn into a dragon, and then after that, it's just sort of like this whole back and forth to get to a point. So I've been trying to hammer out what points that I want, and I have an idea in mind because I have this entire draft that kind of like forms a skeletal outline, but there were parts of it that just didn't feel right, which is why I kind of ended it early. And now it's like I kind of also have this idea to bring in the bee people, which I am standing by because I feel like it would be an important addition, but I just worry that it's going to be overblown in terms of plot. So what I need to do is sit down and do an outline again, but every time I do, I'm just like I don't like something's kind of like making me stop, and whether that's because I keep on trying to write at like 8:30 in the morning after I'm super groggy because my sleep schedule has been fucked up, or just because I can't write by hand at the moment, or just because I'm just burnt out in general by a lot of things. I don't know. But I have yet to sit down and do that um, outline, and we are running out of months, so I need to start thinking about it and start putting together even a general plan of how to fit these bee people in, and what 2/3 of the book is supposed to look like. And it's going to be a little bit nerve-wracking, um, but I think if I work out at least the first quarter, I can get through September, and we'll see. But in any case, let me read out the comments in the chat. Oakleaf says it is absurd to me that anyone took offense at your clock skeet. People really will get mad about anything, huh? Yeah, or they get self-superior. Like, there was a lot of like, a lot of people giving advice that didn't quite hit right. Like, trust in yourself and dump that man. And I'm like, yes, I did both as indicated by the skeet, but the god one really took me out. Like, I don't mean to speak ill of people who are definitely not listening to this, but he hadn't followed me or anything like that, so I kind of feel safe. But like, it's sort of like that one dude who went into my "Hey, I'm considering going meat-free" thread to be a militant vegan. There are some people who just feel weirdly self-superior, and it's always been a thing. I'm not gonna lie. It existed before the internet. Dudes just being weirdly self-superior to anybody they think will listen. But still, it's like common human decency is that you treat others as you wish to be treated, and if you don't want to be talked down to, please don't talk down to a total stranger. Jesus Christ. But here we are. Cryptic says, I can't imagine being so freaking rude as that guy was, right? Like, who goes into a thread and is just like, who goes into threads and is just like, well, gods don't exist? I say this knowing that there was that militant vegan guy who made a career out of going into threads and talking about animal cruelty in very graphic detail. Some people are just weird, like I said. Oakley says, I spent years on both writer Twitter and fandom Twitter and fled to Blue Sky, where I've cultivated who I interact with very carefully because I learned on Twitter the hard way, lol. Writer Twitter was part of what got me into writing Burnout, and that was years ago, early in pitch events being a thing. I can't imagine how hectic it must be now. If it's anything like, or if it's still like what it was back when I first. Okay, so when I left Tumblr, actually, story time. Fuck it, story time. So when I've been on Tumblr since like 2012, but I was on the fandom side of it until about 2020. No, 2020, because it was Nano 2020 when I decided I'm going to start writing original fiction. I finally migrated into Writer proper uh, well into in 2021, and I was there until about 2024. Yeah, 2024, because it was the year that I moved out of my shared apartment with the ex. But what happened is by then I was kind of like iffy about Blur because it is a weird space. Like I kind of implied, Blur works if you know the right people. Otherwise, you are going to be in this weird bubble, and people will keep on trying to drag you into this greater sphere where there are pillars of Blur, quote unquote, and people will just people think that uh, writing conversations, you send them you send an ask to 30 people, and it's the same ask, and they answer it, and you like that post. That's what the interactions are like on Blur. So I'd be like investing actual energy into getting to know people and getting to know their works in progress, and I'd be cheering them on and doing everything that I could, and nobody would remember anything about mine. And it felt very one-sided. Like, I don't really. It's not that I was trying to get attention for my works in progress, but every interaction that I had felt very transactional. Like, they expected me to give them energy, and they expected me to do that without giving, or they weren't intending on giving anything back. They just wanted my energy. It was very draining. But I had created a Discord just to house chats and chatter that I wanted to have because I was starting to get into a new draft. I will get into a cryptic statement later. But anyway, I sent that Discord link to one person, then all of a sudden, Tumblr had shadow banned me. And it took me months to get off their shadow banning list. And when they did, it was like, well, don't do it again. Don't engage in criminal behavior and stuff like that. They were very like, yeah, we unbanned you, but you definitely did something wrong. How dare you? And it was the dumbest thing. So I was like, I had taken a break from Tumblr by that point, between like March all the way up to September when I finally got the shadow ban lifted, because there just didn't seem to be a point to being on Tumblr anymore. Like, I could throw things into the void, but like with the way Tumblr is, unless you were actually going to a person's blog, and nobody was for me, like, what was the point? So I was like, okay, cool. I'm just going to try out these other platforms. I've been meaning to do it anyway, because if you're an author, you need to be on other platforms. Like, nobody's on Tumblr anymore, not professionally. So I went to Twitter and Blue Sky first. I don't remember why Blue Sky. I think it was just because somebody had mentioned it, and somehow I managed to get an invite. But I also got Twitter because I knew that's where the industry was. So this is 2024. And Blue Sky, it was in Blue Sky's infancy. So it was a very homey place, very small place. People frequently talk to each other. So that pulled me in pretty much immediately. And by contrast, you had Twitter, where you would be like just a drop in the soup. So like, I participated in a pitch event, and I worked on trying to get momentum on Twitter, and it felt like I wasn't making any sort of connection there. Um, it felt very professional. So that's why I made an analogy to LinkedIn when I was talking about it yesterday. Um, it wasn't necessarily bad exactly, because the algorithm would only, at that point, only gave me like writer's posts, and writer's posts are usually just like, here's what I'm working on right now, and here's the latest writing news, and by the way, here are also it's basically Blue Sky but bigger, or but bigger and less and more less connected, more remote. But at the same time, the algorithm would also give me everything else. So, like, writer Twitter, it seemed very like you were in this, just like off to the side, the new kid in school, and you didn't know anybody and nobody was talking to you. That's what that felt like. But at the same time, you were also given like every sort of politics under the sun. So, I guess in a way, it was sort of like Tumblr, only less fandomy and less. There were less expectations put on you because, like, on Tumblr, you're kind of expected to say something about everything, whereas on Twitter, they don't even pay attention to you. But anyway, that's it. Oakley says, I gotta head out and start getting ready for bed. It's been cool hanging. Good night, y'all. Sorry I rambled and didn't get to the last sprint. We will do the last sprint, but it was great hanging out with you, Oakleaf. I wish you well, and I hope that you'll be able to catch the next one round. If not, I will see you on the blue skies. Cryptic says, God, I remember all that. It sucker punched me that when the pillar of the community called me by name when I sent them asks, just still sent me the generic asks that didn't really apply to my work, right? I think, yeah, if we're talking about Athena, that's also kind of why I deleted my Tumblr. Athena was interesting and very emblematic of the community in the sense that there was drama, and I feel like it was fabricated. And there was a lot of victim, I'm the victim mentality going on. It was a nightmare all around. I'm not at all regretful of having left, but yeah, I think you know the story, but basically Athena came back and basically was like, yeah, these people that I might have circumvented their blocks and taken posts theirs out of context for the sole reason of trying to sick people on them. But I was really the victim. Well, she came back and made a post about that and made a post to that effect, and people were like rallying behind her, and I was like, I'm done. So yeah. Cryptic says it was very much that vibe of feeling like I was her friend and then realizing I wasn't. Yeah, I feel like that's true with a lot of Ripler, to be honest with you. There were a lot of people on Ripler that I kind of felt that way about. Not you, obviously, but like, there was one person who was like, Jax blocked me because I didn't remember every little detail about her work in progress, and I was like, no, that's not the reason. It's because you basically were using me for you were basically using me, essentially, or you said that you wanted to be my friend, but you didn't actually want to be my friend. But yeah, it's also why I get super uncomfortable whenever Ripler peeps kind of come in and find my stuff. I won't name names exactly because that's wrong, but there were a couple of times whenever somebody would find my account months later and friend me, I'd be like, you didn't talk to me back then. Why are you why are you friending me now? Like it's I guess it's because like I was in fandom spaces and there was a lot of fucking around and finding out. So in fandom spaces, so it's sort of like now I'm very cautious about who I talk to. Um, just in general, but like if you talk to me a lot, then I'm more likely to be like, cool, you seem like cool peeps. I'm going to open up to you and befriend you. But if you're like, you know, I don't talk to you, but I follow you everywhere, I'm like, okay, why? I don't know what I'm going to expect once my book takes off and I start getting an audience, because like I realized that being on social media and being active with social media means interacting with people of all kinds and all stripes, and some people on social media don't really have boundaries, so like I don't really know what I'm going to be doing whenever it comes time that the hard questions get asked. And I mean, last night was evidence of that. I do kind of feel a little bit guilty for being like, yeah, I'm shutting down the thread and hiding a lot of posts because I don't feel comfortable having this here. Or I'd be like, I'm going to write this long thread about this, and like, and I'm going to write this long thread about why I already know this, and I'm a little voicing how frustrated I feel right now about all kinds of different things. Yeah, 100%. Like, I feel like that's not behavior that a writer should have, or any kind of public figure, but, you know, at the same time, like, actually, no, not at the same time. Like, that is something that I will have to deal with down the road. And I don't say that as, haha, I will be famous one day, but it's more like, unless I do something really cancelable, I'm going to have at least, I'm going to have the number that I have right now on Blue Sky. Like, people are looking at what I'm doing. And once I get published, you know, my name and my behavior is attached to the thing that I create, and I will have to deal with a public persona of some kind. And it's like, these are things that should not matter. They're things that go on down the line, but I don't know, in my defense, like, I'm online now, like, and the internet has already exhibited its talent for digging up shit that you said in the past, so, like, it's worth it to consider, you know, what face you're putting forward at all times, I guess. And also, you know, this is part of the process. Like, it's pre-marketing, as I regretfully call it. It's building up who you are as a writer, so that when release time finally comes, you can be like, here's my book and I am already a writer. But again, these are things that should not matter as much as the book, and I don't know why I keep on thinking about them. But anyway, it is 11:30. By the time we get done with this shit, it will be midnight. So let's get started with that last sprint. And this will be the last sprint of the night. Damn, we have gotten to the end of one. Hold on while I queue up another lo-fi hip-hop thingamajig. Here we go. Add that on. Anyway. One more sprint, I swear, and then we can go. This has been a very long night. I do apologize for going off. But then again, I'm also remembering that it's only been 2 hours. In any case, 20 minutes are on the clock. I wish you the best of luck, and at the end, we'll wrap this up with updates. Good luck! Alright, and that is the last of them. How did we do? Meanwhile, I'm like, I don't know if I want to actually count anything. Here we are. Actually, it's not as bad. 2079. That's actually really good, especially since I spent most of it hammering out something that I didn't really like the first time around. Oh, and I'm super close to the end, so I'll probably finish this up at the very end, or after we get off. But in any case, yeah, it is currently 11:53. So I do believe it's just Cryptic who's currently watching, possibly. If so, hi. If not, also hi. Cryptic says, I'm honestly just thinking about what I'm going to get as a snack when I get up, to be honest. That is fair. I hope it is something good. I hope you have options. So I'll wrap this up very quickly so that you can go and get some food snacks, as my FC leader likes to say. Also, yes, hi. So basically, still weekly. I don't really have too many plans this coming weekend, but still, it is the summer, so I am like, I should get out and breathe fresh air. That will help me. Plus, I must get out and be healthy because Benjamin would want me to be. Benjamin is also off to my left and looking at me and being like, we must go to bed soon. But basically, we might have a stream, we might not. I've. It depends. Like, it would be nice to edit the rest of the Infinite Sadness over the weekend and start getting things to things together to starting on the next draft. But we'll see. Keep an eye on Blue Sky on that note for any additional streams. They will come as a complete surprise to me as well as you. But the rest of the week will be busy, so there will be no streams. Definitely not tomorrow because that is raid night. Thursday, I am taking that as a conscious night off. Friday, I am probably going to be dragged into shenanigans via raid team. Saturday, Sunday is a maybe. Then we're back up to Monday through whatever. Which means that Tuesday is the next guaranteed stream. And again, Tuesdays are our guaranteed days. It will be Tuesday from now until I finally finish a goddamn draft that I actually want to publish. And then some. You know, maybe I'll start in on another work in progress immediately after. We will see. It will be a surprise. But that is the update. Keep an eye TLDR, keep an eye on Blue Sky for any further updates and further surprise streams. Otherwise, I will see you on Tuesday. Thank you again if you made it this far. I know that this went a little bit longer than our usual. And there was a lot of ranting going on. A lot of things that I've said that I will probably regret later, but feel really nice to have said. Especially when it comes to like anger and its validity, but also how so is a certain kind of joy and things like that. So thank you for once again, thank you for enabling me, but also thank you for saying through that. I hope all these ramblings have some value to you. Like, I don't mean to come off as like I know all. These are all just opinions, as always. But if you start thinking about how you approach things, that would be awesome. That would be cool. If I open your horizons, I am very glad to have done that for you. If not, ignore me. They are opinions. Cryptic says, I will always enable you whenever I can, and that is why I love you, and that is why you will always be welcome at these streams. But on that note, I also should not be cruel to you. Go get your food snacks. Go get your foodstuffs. And I hope you have an excellent rest of the night. Hopefully Kitty does not scare the shit out of you anymore. But it is Kitty, so probably it will. And I will definitely see you on Blue Sky. I will definitely see you on Tuesday. And we might see each other over the weekend. We don't know. But in any case, yes. Good night. Thanks again. Love y'all. Bye.